I'm from Arizona, and Arizona is a desert, and I love Arizona, but it's definitely looks different than Honduras. I remember flying over through the air on the airplane as we were descending down into the valley, and just thinking, "Wow, everything's green. There's trees everywhere. There's trees growing out besides buildings. And the area is extremely mountainous, particularly the capital, the Tegucigalpa area. And so I just remember thinking, like going, landing into the airport and seeing all the green as we flew over all the cities, and seeing how cities, or the city just sprang up into the mountains, and all the different houses that were built there. And you think, how did they get materials into that type of area so they could build houses and things like that? But just being so impressed in how beautiful it all was, and that was really exciting to me, because that had been something different than where I had grown up. And then I remember we come and we get in, and we land the airplane, and everyone in the plane starts cheering. And that was a little different, a little surprising, and it was like, wow, why is everyone cheering? And then it was when I found out, well, to the Tegucigalpa airport specifically is supposed to be one of the more dangerous airports in the world. And so the fact that we landed and we didn't crash and die, we're celebrating that. And I was kind of, my heart stopped a little bit, like, oh, really? I didn't realize my life was at stake. And as I was talking to more people, it's been a long time since they've had an accident. But when the airport was first established, and when technology and planes weren't quite what they are today, they did have a series of bad plane accidents. And so now, even though the danger is not nearly what it used to be, there's still applause every time a plane lands, and people get to walk out of the plane. So that was kind of funny. I wasn't expecting that, but it was cool. And so we go and we leave the airport, and we met the mission president, and the assistants were there, and it was just a great experience. My mission president, what was kind of neat was that we actually were in the MTC with my mission president. He came in, we were in the month of July, I was in the MTC, and he had been a new mission president who had just been called. So he came up to Utah and met us before we even got to the mission field. And he was from Costa Rica, and he didn't speak a lick of English at all. And so while we were in the MTC, there was a lot of just smiling and laughing, because we didn't speak Spanish, he didn't speak English, and it was just a lot of, Honduras, baptized, a lot of excitement, but not a lot of communication. And so by the time we'd been in the MTC for a little while, and we were able to meet him there at the airport. It was great to see him again, and he was remarked at how surprised he was that were speaking to him this time, and that we actually were able to communicate with him again. We weren't perfect at Spanish by a long shot, but just even in the time when we had come into the MTC to the time we left, the improvement was there. And that was comforting to know that, we still don't totally understand everything he's saying, and I'm sure he doesn't understand everything we're saying, but there's been progress made. And so that was good, because sometimes, we don't realize the progress we make with lots of things, and learning a language can be like that in particular. So, it was just a wonderful experience to see him, and to get the big hug that was waiting for us, and it was wonderful to be where we wanted to be. So that's kind of just like arriving, I guess. The first week, there was it was definitely, like I mentioned earlier, there's that culture shock that comes. I remember, I was assigned my companion, my very first companion. We go out to our area, and we get to I stayed in the capital, and we get to our area, and we go and get to our house where we are unpacking our stuff. In fact, both me and my companion were new to the area, so we're kind of getting a little lost, but we find eventually where our apartment is, and we go and we unload everything and put some of our stuff away, and I needed to go to the bathroom. So I asked my companion, have you found the bathroom yet? And he's like, well, I think it's out there, and so I leave, and it was it was inside, but it was still detached from the house and whatnot. And I go, and the bathroom, it looks, fairly normal, like a fairly normal bathroom. There was definitely a lot of cement, and just painted cement, as opposed to drywall or things like that we typically see in the U.S., or tile. So there was just this kind of cement room, and I go to the bathroom, and then I go to flush, and the toilet doesn't flush. And I think, okay, this is kind of awkward, what do I do? Do I just leave it? Or, I keep trying to press the latch and it's not flushing. And I'm just thinking, like, what do I do? And so, I go and talk to my companion and try to explain. He didn't speak English either. So I'm trying to explain, the baño, the bathroom, and you're making noises, kind of making a fool of myself, I'm sure. And he finally gets it and he's like, oh, yeah. Lots of times there's no water. We don't have running water all the time. And so I was like, oh, well then how do you flush the toilet? And so he came and he showed me, and right, I hadn't noticed this when I walked in, but so right next to the little, cement building that had the bathroom was this big tub that they call a pila, and it's basically this big cement tub, it's a square and it's about your waist high, and it's just filled with water. So when they do have running water, and usually they would have running water multiple times a week, but not all the time, and when it came, it would only come for a couple hours. And so you go, and when you have water, you turn it on, and you fill up your big pila, and that's your water storage. And so he said, yeah, so, what you go is you go and you take a bucket, and you dip the bucket in the pila, and then so now you got the bucket full of water, and you go and you pour the water directly into the toilet bowl, and that flushes the toilet, which I did not know would work, but it totally does, and it works in the States too. If you just go and take a bunch of water and dump it down the toilet, then the toilet flushes. And so that was quickly an introduction to things are different here, but they still work. And so that was kind of a funny thing. And then, the other kind of different thing that happened that first week is I did get sick. And it was really the only time my whole mission I got sick, but I got really sick. I think part of it was just being in a new place and just having my body adjusting to different bacterias that are all around us always and things like that. But so I got really sick with a little bit of just traveler's adjustment. But then I also got a disease called dengue, and it's basically a disease transmitted by mosquitoes that gives you extremely high fevers and searing pain all up and down your body. And so I got that in part because I wasn't smart enough to use mosquito repellent. So when they tell you to use mosquito repellent, do it. It really is important. But I ended up getting really sick that first week. And so I arrived in Honduras on a Wednesday, and I started feeling sick Sunday morning. And so I ended up going into the hospital Sunday night and was there Sunday night, Monday, and got out Tuesday morning, as they treated me for dengue. Basically, was the main illness. So that was a pretty humbling experience, really, because you go to the mission, you're excited, and you're meeting all these new people and experiencing this huge culture shock at the same time, and realizing that you have learned some Spanish, but not nearly as much as you'd hoped, maybe, and so that you have a hard time expressing yourself, and then just to feel so terrible and so crummy, it was a very humbling experience. It was kind of my refiner's fire, really, and I remember just thinking, like, this isn't supposed to be this way, and just wanting to be home and wanting to be in my own bed, and I had been away at college, so I'd kind of gotten over that whole I want my mom kind of thing, kind of that homesickness. I'd kind of conquered that after being away at college. But man, at that moment, I sure did want to be back home, and just have someone to take care of me. And here I was, just my body aching everywhere, and a fever of 100 and something. I didn't even know what my fever was because they told me it in Celsius, which meant nothing to me. But with a fairly serious fever, and yeah, I finally got in the hospital, and they started giving me the medicines I needed to get better. But it was really an opportunity to really think to myself, is this going to beat me? Am I going to let this, how this experience has happened to me, and how am I going to take it, and how am I going to use it? Am I going to let it beat me down and give me a bad attitude about being on a mission, or is it going to be something that I can use to my advantage? And really, it really was. It became something to, the whole ward knew us instantly because I was that missionary who had gotten put in the hospital. And what was kind of surprising is the members became extremely, maybe they would have been anyways, but they were very willing to work with us, and we were known within the ward very quickly. It ended up being my most successful area, really, in terms of getting the members to work with us. And I think part of it was the blessing of they all knew who I was very quickly. So the country of Honduras, it's in Central America, and it's on the up above it is Guatemala. And then on the side that you've got countries like Belize and El Salvador and Nicaragua's below. So the capital is Tegucigalpa. And Tegucigalpa is the name of my mission. There were 2 other missions in Honduras. The Tegucigalpa mission was the southern third of the country. The middle part of the country is called the Comayagüela mission. And then the northern third of the country is the San Pedro Sula mission. In terms of just Honduras in general, it's a beautiful place. Obviously, it's near to my heart, but it's very green, lots of trees. It can be a little muggy at times. It'll be humid. I think the way our mission worked is that if you were in the capital, if you were in the main city, then you wore your suit coat on Sunday to church, and then that was it. And then if you went to the very southern part of Honduras, where it got even hotter, and just more poor in general, you never had to wear your suit coat. So you'll probably if you're going there, you're probably not gonna put your coat on very often, probably for zone conferences and maybe on Sundays. But it can be pretty warm. I'm from Arizona. And so I never really felt like the heat was as bad as it was in Arizona. It is a little more humid, but I never really felt like it was something that seriously hindered, my ability to function or go outside. I never felt like it was just, that there was a heat advisory and I wouldn't be able to go outside. But yeah, I really, the country, the people there love soccer. Soccer is the thing. And I remember while I was there, Honduras had only qualified for the World Cup one other time in their history of trying, in the history of the World Cup. But they qualified for the second time while I was there on a mission. And what was funny is the reason they qualified was because the American team tied whoever they were playing that night. And so because they tied that other team, and Honduras won their game, it gave Honduras enough points to qualify for the World Cup. So everybody was just so excited. There was cars honking everywhere. There was just parties going out in the streets, people lighting off fireworks. People were just ecstatic. I ended up taking a video. We were at the top of our apartment building, and people were in the streets, just the happiest I've ever seen them in my life. It was like a national holiday. And then the next day, anytime anyone saw me, they're like, "Oh, hey, thanks for sending us to the World Cup. We love gringos." And thank goodness for the gringos. That goal saved our season. And just people were so happy. I had people offering to buy me drinks and stuff like that the next day, just because they were so pleased that we had helped them get to the World Cup. So that was kind of funny. And of course, they made it. They didn't win, and I don't even think they won a single match, but just getting there was just so exciting for them. And so that was kind of fun to see and to kind of be a part of and root for Honduras, But so that was a lot of fun. Other things about the country, the money is called lempira, and they don't really use coins. It's all they have one lempira. When I was there, and I think it's pretty much about the same. It takes 20 lempiras to make $1. But they're all, you never have like quarters of a lempira. You don't have any coins. They're all bills. And the bills are kind of cool. They're all different colors and things like that. They're kind of fun. I brought some of them home as souvenirs just because I thought they were kind of cool looking. And then another kind of interesting thing about Honduras is that most people's homes aren't really big, and they don't have a lot of places to store food typically. Typically whatever they have in the fridge. And so instead of having a pantry or a place to store food like we would often associate here in the United States, pretty much in every neighborhood within usually 4 minutes of walking maximum, someone basically owns a little store out of their house, and they call it a pulperia. And what you do is you go up, and usually they have just a little latch that opens, and so you can kind of like see inside their house, and you can kind of knock on their little gate or their chain, or just call to them, and someone basically within their house comes out and says, yeah, what do you need, and you can buy kind of the essentials type thing. You can buy milk, you can buy water, you can buy little bread rolls that they sell a lot and eat a lot called semitas. You can buy beans or rice or just a bag of chips or things like that. But a lot of what we would think of kind of like the same stuff you would find in a gas station, in a convenience store. You can buy all that, in a little store. I'd run out of someone's house that's always within walking distance. So that's kind of cool. So the biggest thing that I love about the Honduran people is that they want to love you. It doesn't matter who you are. They want to love you. They want to welcome you into their homes. I mean, there were people that would let us come in to talk to them, and it became pretty apparent pretty quickly that they actually, like maybe they were really faithful members of their own church or things like that. I mean, they weren't totally like, oh, I want to hear your message, but I just want to hear from you. And I thought that was really, really amazing. That they were, they have such an inherent trust in people, and immediately from the first time you talk to them, they think they already count you as a friend immediately. And I wish we did that a little bit more. I mean, so much we get so involved in our phones or in technology or in our own little cliques and our own friends and circles that we don't really want to associate or say anything to people outside of our comfort zone. But in Honduras, they're always willing to do that. Everyone is their friend. In fact, I remember after I came home from my mission, I ended up going to the store with my sister, and I was going to the store, and I'd been used to being in Honduras, and so I was saying hi to people, and talking to people, and one of the store people had their name tag, so I was calling them by their name and things like that. And I remember I went home, and Elizabeth, my sister, went to my parents and said, "Brian's weird." And my parents said, "Why?" And Elizabeth said, "Because he's like just talking to everybody. It's weird. It's strange. Like, people that he's just saying hi to random people at the store." And I laughed, and she kind of teased me about it. But it was because that's the way it is in Honduras, that people want to say hello to you. And they want to hear what you have to say, not so much because they know that the message will change their lives, and the message can and does, but just because they want to hear from you. And like I said, they're willing to take the shirt right off their backs and give it to you if need be, because they care about you the moment they meet you, and that's one of the things that I most admire about the Honduras people. When it comes to like Book of Mormon type things or stuff like that, there are ruins there. I don't think anyone has said, "Oh, I think that this is the land bountiful," or something like that. Nothing that specific, but I do know that there are sometimes church tour groups that go through a lot of Central America. But what is kind of cool in terms of modern day church history was something that I didn't realize when went there in the beginning, but it's something that really helped me, because sometimes as a missionary you feel like you're getting nowhere. And you feel like every time that you baptize, for every person you might baptize, there's two people that go inactive, or that there's just that the work is stalling, and that there is definite retention problems in Honduras, and that can be kind of depressing as a missionary, as people that you helped and served and worked so hard to help bring to the church. Sometimes they fall away too, and that can be really disheartening. And so I remember that I was kind of thinking about that and talking about that with a companion, and just kind of feeling, man, that makes things kind of tough. But then, as I got to understand the history of Honduras a little bit more, I actually ended up getting transferred to an area where one of the women in the ward talked about how she remembered, and this woman was a little bit older, she was a grandmother type age, but wasn't extremely old by any means. And she remembered talking like, "Oh yeah, well, the church building that I used to go to, and it wasn't in my area, but it was in the neighboring area." She said that church building, that's the first church building that was ever built in Honduras. And I said, oh, really? That's kind of cool. And she said, yeah, I remember as a little girl going to take lunch to people who were building it, the very first building. And I said, really? And she said, yeah, I must have been, like 10 years old or something like that. So at that time, what I realized is, the church had only been in Honduras. The first building had only gone up 50 years ago. And the church had come in, a few years before that. And so that was kind of interesting. And she said, yeah, I remember when there was nothing there. And so later in my mission, I had a chance to go to that building and attend that ward. And there in that ward was the sixth person who had ever been baptized in Honduras. And he was older, he was definitely an older grandpa, but he was there. The sixth person who had ever been baptized was still attending that ward, and was still alive. And that was when I really began to see, and what it was a testimony builder to me that even though sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you think the work's not progressing. I thought, wow, basically in 50 years, there went from being no members in the whole country of Honduras to now in every single neighborhood almost there's a church building, an owned building by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they have a temple now, and it's been divided up into 3 missions, and there's just and there's probably over 100 wards. I mean, there's just the church has really exploded if you think about it. In just 50 years, just how many new members have been baptized, and that the work is progressing forward. If I think about it, when I left, there was probably about 180 missionaries, and typically each companionship, there's typically 1 ward to each companionship. So there was probably about 90 wards in my mission, and then there's 3 missions. So yeah, there was probably over 250 wards in the whole country, and that had all happened in 50 years. And so, what's going to happen within another generation, a lot of the people were first generation members, and the second generation members, they were just, kind of coming of age and starting to just, be the adults and have their own kids. So, there's really, there's really just 2, maybe in some families 3 generations of members, and that's incredible just how much the church has grown in that short time, and so it was helpful for me to really understand that, because, like I said, sometimes you really do feel like, man, there's we keep losing everybody. It's like trying to get a handful of water, but the Lord is aware of what's going on, and the work will continue to progress, and there will, the church will not take steps backward. The work, Heavenly Father won't let that happen to the work, and so you just have to sometimes take a little bigger view of the whole picture and realize that the church has come a long way in what's honestly a very short amount of time, and within, like I said, within another cycle of generations, it's just going to continue to grow exponentially. Within tourism in Honduras, it is possible maybe that someone has been to Honduras and things like that. If they have been to Honduras, sometimes cruises go there, and it's because they've got some very beautiful beaches. They've got some old ruins that are kind of exciting for people to go see, especially Mormons kind of like them, because it's like, oh, this could be the city of Nephi, or you get a little bit of that sometimes. But yeah, so there's a lot of real ruins, but then Honduras kind of plays on that too, and they'll build ruins, build old looking Aztec things and stuff like that to just kind of represent their culture, because it is true. The area was inhabited by indigenous people for a long time, and there are some really cool monuments and really cool remnants left of those peoples, and so that's kind of exciting. They've got some great beaches, like I said, and so a lot of the more touristy type stuff was in the northern half of Honduras, where I didn't spend any time. But there is some really beautiful things there, and there, like I said, cruises in particular will often make stops in Honduras to go spend a little bit of time. One of the things that was kind of cool, and one of the things that I went to multiple times, is in the capital, there is this giant statue. They call it Pikachu, and it's a statue of Christ, and it looks a lot like the one down in Brazil. I think it's in Rio de Janeiro, the giant statue of Christ holding his hands out and things like that. And it's not nearly as big. The one in Honduras is not nearly as big as the one that's in Brazil, but it is pretty big, and it kind of overlooks the city. And that was kind of cool. Just as a missionary, that it's kind of a reminder that Heavenly Father and Christ, that they are looking down on us, and in particular, they were concerned about the work. And so there were times that that was actually one of the mission activities that we would do, where the president would usually take the missionaries up there. All the missionaries who had just finished their first transfer, he would invite them to come up to the Capitol and go up to the mountain on a preparation day and go see the statue, because it was kind of a fun thing, kind of a neat monument in Tegucigalpa, but also just to remind us, that Christ is looking down on us for our work, and we should continue to know that we're there to serve Him, and that He's really there. So that was kind of neat too. Honduras is a third world country, and as is often common, and unfortunately in a lot of third world countries, people see someone from the United States and they think money, and not even just people wanting to rob foreigners or travelers, but each other. People Hondurans robbing Hondurans, and that is sad. It's really unfortunate. I saw something the other day that kind of made me chuckle a little bit in a cynical way, I guess. But there was this thing that I saw on Facebook about the 10 most dangerous cities in the world, and the number one most dangerous city in the world was San Pedro Sula, which is in Honduras. It wasn't part of my mission, but it was in Honduras, and it really is. It is too bad that there is some danger there. The most, in my experience personally, the city of San Pedro Sula is a place that is a fairly dangerous place, but that was a lot of the bad stuff usually happens there. Some of the organized crime happens there. But definitely in Honduras, you don't want to draw attention to yourself unnecessarily in any way, especially draw attention as if you might have a lot of money. The mission, obey the mission rules. If you obey the mission rules, that takes care of 99% of any danger you might ever be in. You go out during the day, and you get back in your apartment by 9 o'clock at night to go do planning and go to bed. There's no need to be out past mission rule time ever. And if you do that, you're taking care of most. You're going to take care of 99% of incidents just by doing that. By always being with your companion, never being alone, and always going back to your apartment at the right time. Because as is common in most areas, most of the bad stuff that happens is happening later at night, and early in the morning. So you just want to make sure that you go home when you're supposed to, and most of the time you'll be taken care of. Also, you want to use some common sense. I wouldn't carry my debit card around if I didn't need it. Most of the time, you're not going to buy stuff with your debit card mostly. Like I talked about earlier, they have those little stores that are within walking distance, those little convenience store type things. You're always paying cash. No one's going to take a card anyways. The only time you're ever going to take a card is if you're going to a legitimate, big established restaurant or big established grocery store, something like that. But almost all your purchases are going to be in cash. So take some cash with you. Don't take a lot, but take some, and leave your card at home. You don't need it. Cameras, obviously, missionaries want to take pictures and things like that, and that's understandable. But I wouldn't, I wouldn't take my camera somewhere unless I knew I was going to be taking some pictures. And if I had my camera, I wouldn't be, just dangling it on my wrist all day and then walking by people. Take it out. You can use your camera, you can take pictures and all those types of things, but you should just be smart about it. And if you don't need something, don't carry it with you. I think there are, at least in my mission, there were some places that were a little more dangerous than others. But the other thing too is you got to trust your mission president. In my mission president, there were areas that only sisters went to because they were the safest in the whole mission. There were other areas where people from North America, from the United States, did not serve in because they were a little more dangerous, and the people were a little more, they might have been a little more willing to rob someone who looked like they came from the United States, because the often criminals feel like anyone that comes from the United States must have a lot of money. So your mission president will be smart, and if there's areas where maybe aren't appropriate for sisters or things like that, he'll do what's necessary, and act accordingly. But I mean, pretty much, as long as you're obeying the mission rules and being smart, I wouldn't say it's something that you need to worry about. I know I didn't worry about it day in and day out. It was usually not even on my mind worrying about getting robbed or anything like that. I mean, I did the area that was probably most dangerous that I served in, and it really wasn't that dangerous, but that was the one area where someone did try and rob us. That was kind of silly more than anything else. That was the middle of the day, and we were walking back from lunch, and this guy, who I'm pretty sure, well, he was either I'm pretty sure he was stoned, or at least he was high on something, and he came up to us, and he knew that we had a little cell phone, as missionaries, and he came up to us and staggered toward us more like, and he had a little butter knife, and then he said, hey, give me your phone, or something like that. And at first I was kind of like surprised, like, what's going on? But my companion was a pretty quick thinker, and he kind of swung his backpack around and just kind of shoved the guy over, just knocked him down, and we just walked away, briskly walked away and went on our way. And it was so silly. I mean, it was this same man who we usually saw him most days, and most days he was really high or drunk or something, and so it was just kind of funny. It was like, we see you every day and we say hi to you and talk to you, and now you're trying to rob us with a butter knife. And we kind of shoved, like I said, my companion kind of pushed him down, and we walked away, and and then I think we saw him 2 weeks later, and he was, hi elders, how you doing? So I mean, he was he was a little messed up, unfortunately, in the head, I think. But it wasn't so in general, that was the most dangerous incident I was ever in, and really even then it wasn't. I never ever felt really in danger. And in terms of the food, so I liked Honduran food. I wouldn't say there was anything ever that weird or strange about it. A lot of rice, a lot of beans, a lot of eggs, a lot of tortillas, and honestly, a lot of food that's not very expensive. Because people there just didn't have a lot of money a lot of times. But one of the things I loved about Honduran food that I wish happened here was that it was sold everywhere. I mentioned that there are pulperias, which are basically these little convenience stores that are where they sell food out of people sell food out of their houses that they've run basically as convenience stores. But there was also always vendors on the street corners, always selling something, either drinks or hot dogs, or baleadas, which a baleada is, it's basically a flour tortilla with refried beans and maybe cheese, and sometimes they had other things in there like sausage and stuff like that, or sometimes it was just beans and tortilla and cheese. So sometimes it was really simple, but it was kind of cool that they always just sold food on the street corner. So anytime you were hungry, you could just buy something right there. And so that I kind of sometimes I guess they do it in some cities, like New York maybe, where they have more street vendors of food. But that was something that I always thought was kind of cool, because if I was hungry from tracting all day, I could just buy something. It was always really easy to buy a snack. And I always liked it. I didn't. It was kind of funny. In my first area, I ended up gaining about 20 pounds, and that was just because we got fed a lot, and I couldn't really contain myself, and it kind of just became a joke almost, like, oh, Elder Lowe, he never stops eating, and so then I got that reputation a little bit, and so then if I ever ate less, I got looks like, why aren't you eating my food, and you're worried about offending people. So I just ate and ate and ate, and I ended up gaining about 20 pounds, which was not something I necessarily wanted to do. And so then once I left that area, I became much more conscious of just eating my share, not trying to put on a show, and so I ended up losing that weight in the next area or two, as I also got sent to a very mountainous area, so I was doing a lot of hiking too. But so I ended up losing that weight pretty quickly afterwards. But yeah, so I mean there was always plenty of food to go around, and the people there, they'll give you the shirt right off their backs if you ask them, and they're always more than willing to share whatever they have to eat with you, and that was kind of a humbling thing, because they didn't have a lot, but whatever they had, they wanted you to have some too, and so that was kind of cool. And I never felt like the food was really weird or disgusting or anything like that. It was pretty normal stuff. The most adventurous thing they had was they have this soup that they really like, and the soup is called mondongo soup, and that one is a little weird because the meat that they have in there is cow intestine. And so that was, when I first heard it, I was like, ooh, I don't know if I really want that so much. But I did have some, and the what I remember is that the meat, which like I said is cow intestine, was extremely chewy, and so I didn't really love that so much. But I had it, ate it, didn't kill me, and so it ended up being fine. But yeah, but other than mondongo soup, most of the food is pretty run of the mill. In terms of Honduran Spanish, it's Spanish. I think that, is there a little bit of a different accent maybe between Honduras and Nicaragua? Yeah, maybe a little bit. But it's Spanish. There really aren't a ton of differences. What is kind of funny in Honduras is they tend to, there's a phrase they use, they tend to eat their S's, or in other words, that they don't pronounce their S's a lot, which is kind of funny. And so, for example, when you have the city San Pedro Sula, and so as someone who reads that, it's very obvious there's S's in there. But oftentimes I would hear people say San Pedro Hula, and so they just kind of they say they eat their S's. They don't really pronounce them. So that can be kind of a headache, where you're like, wait, what did you just say? And they just kind of slur over them and don't pronounce them at all. So that was kind of funny. And there are definitely slang terms, and those terms differ from country to country. In fact, I got a souvenir T-shirt when I left that said, I speak Catracho, which Catracho is a slang term for Honduran, kind of like Yankee for an American or something like that. And it had some of the Honduran caliche or slang terms on there that were kind of funny. Some of them were not super appropriate always, but there are others that like that they're just Honduran slang words like oh gosh. So one would be like a jalón, which is just to people would say, oh, I'm going to take a jalón, which is to hitchhike, or another word they would say a lot is cheque, which is just like good, or they had another word that was macizo. And macizo actually just means like solid or hard, but they would say it the way we would say cool. You're like, oh, que macizo, like how cool is that, So there are a few Honduran slang words and things like that, but it's Spanish, and so the few, that it's not like anyone from Nicaragua who came to Honduras ever had a hard time communicating with people. It's the same language. Maybe the differences might be about the same as if we went to England. Would there be a few words that were a little different if we went to England, and would they sound maybe a little different? Yeah, there's some differences, but by and large it's the same thing, at least in my opinion. One of the things that is really interesting, and especially when you're going to a different country, is that you're going to have a little bit of culture shock, and the people you're going to be with are different than you, both your companions, the people you serve with, and the people that you're serving. And so I think it's important to keep an open mind and to understand that not everyone's been raised in the same way that you have, and not everyone's been raised the same way as maybe your friends have been. I saw that quickly in the MTC. My companion when I was in the MTC was named Elder Falasui, and he was a missionary from American Samoa. And the way that he was just very different. His background was extremely different than mine. I remember that he spent a lot of time when we were learning the language in the MTC and trying to practice and things like that. I remember that it seemed like maybe he wasn't getting it quite as easily, and so I didn't quite know how best to help him and things like that. And it wasn't until about halfway through the MTC that I realized we were learning English, or we were learning Spanish from English. And Elder Falasui knew English, but he didn't know it nearly as well as I thought he did. And there were a lot of times where when I finally was able to talk to him and realize why maybe some things were harder than others, I realized that a lot of the words he was trying to learn in Spanish, he didn't really even understand what they meant in English. And so it was a really great experience for me to realize, sometimes you assume people know things, but they might not at all, especially when it comes to things like the gospel. we might assume that people know what we mean when we say Jesus Christ and things like that. But sometimes they maybe don't, or maybe they think they do, but the way they're interpreting a word is completely different than the way we do. Maybe in a word like the atonement, we have one interpretation of it, and we know that it means certain things, but another person hears it and says, oh yeah, I know what that is, but they're thinking about it in a completely different way. And it's just a lot of it has to do with the way we're raised and where we come from and the experiences we've had in our lives. And it's important to remember that those are all going to be extremely different. And so when you go to Honduras, and when you go probably anywhere, but at least from my experience in Honduras, it was important to realize that these people are different. And the way that they see things and their experiences and how they've come to be who they are is going to be greatly influenced by how they grew up. And it's going to be different than the way you grew up. And so as long as you keep that in mind and really try to keep an open mind on when you talk to different people, you'll have a lot less confusion and a lot less mix-ups. When I think about the people of Honduras, I always am reminded of just how humble they were. And, it takes a lot of humility to be able to let some 19-year-old into your house who doesn't really speak your language and have that person tell you, you need to completely change your life to do exactly those things that I'm telling you about, and then to do it, to have that trust and that faith. And that's what I love about the Honduran people. They're so faithful. And one of the greatest examples of that was one of my good friends and that I met down there, made down there, named Jaime. Jaime was one of the first people that I ever had the opportunity to teach the gospel to and to eventually baptize. And so I was in my first area with my trainer, and as I've kind of mentioned before, I did not speak Spanish yet. I might have thought that I spoke Spanish, but really I didn't. And so I got there and realized that I didn't really always know how to say what I wanted to, and didn't really understand what was always being said back to me. But as we got to know Jaime, who at the time was in high school, we found someone who truly was prepared, who truly was one of the elect, as they say sometimes. And everything that we said, he immediately just soaked it all in, and was willing to make major changes in his life to become the type of person who could become baptized. And he worked hard to get ready for baptism. And what was kind of fun for me is Jaime wanted to major in English, and so he spoke some English, and so it allowed me an opportunity to really say things to him that maybe I wasn't able to say to other people because he spoke a little bit of English. And he was just such an example to me of someone who was willing to listen to complete strangers and turn his life totally around because he wanted the knowledge and the blessings that we had as being members of the church. And he's someone that I'm close to this day. Now he's graduated from college and he's served in young men's, and he's served in the elders quorum and just done all these wonderful things. And he's really become an example to me of someone who loves the gospel. And he's still my Facebook friend, and I see him on Facebook sometimes or talk to him, and he's a better Facebook missionary. In some ways I think he's a better missionary than I am. He's always putting things on and telling people how much he loves the gospel and going to the temple, and he sang in the choir at the temple dedication in Honduras a year ago, and just is an incredible man now, and I'm blessed to have known him, and I think that he's told me how much that it's blessed his life to have the gospel, and how grateful he is to my companion and I for teaching it to him. But I think I learned more from him than he learned from me, and that's the great part about being a missionary. You really get the opportunity to help people change their lives, and they'll be so grateful to you. But by the time you're done, you'll realize that you've learned just as much from them, and you're grateful to them for the things that they've shown you and the faithfulness they've showed you. I know in my life, I was born into the gospel, and that was a great blessing. I've been going to church since the day I was born, and my parents have always taught me how to do, to live the right way, and they've always taught me how to live according to the gospel, and it's something by and large I've done. But there's been times where I've taken it for granted, and with my experience with Jaime and with so many other people, you see just how grateful they are to have it in their lives, and they don't take it for granted. And they know that, they know what it's like to not have the gospel in their lives, and the blessings and the differences that have come into their lives since being introduced to the gospel. And I'm grateful to them for showing me that, and for showing me how I should always remember the value being a member of the Church of Jesus Christ. And they're people, the people down there, Jaime and all the other wonderful people that I met, they're people that I'll always remember. And thankfully, through advances in technology, they're people that I can continue to keep in contact with, which is another great blessing. And it allows me to always remember the lessons that they taught me, which, like I said, I think were just as important as anything that I ever taught them. The mission has been one of the things that's influenced my life more than anything else. I know that going on a mission was one of the best decisions I ever made. For me, it's right up there with marrying my wife. And I know Honduras was the place that I was supposed to go. I remember, when you fill out your papers, I remember there being questions about rate your ability, or how well you think you would be able to learn another language, and how interested are you in going outside of the United States. And I, maybe unlike a lot of missionaries, I said I didn't really want to go anywhere. I wanted to stay in the States. I wanted to speak English. I didn't want to have to worry about any of that other stuff. So when I opened my call, I was surprised. I was surprised to see a country where I couldn't even pronounce the name of the city, and I was a little nervous about it. But as soon as I got there, I knew it was the place I was supposed to be. I know that I was called of God to serve there, and I know that the people that I was able to talk to, that they were there to bless my life just as much as I was there to bless theirs. Serving a mission was a wonderful experience because I was able to grow closer to the Savior, and I was able to grow closer to other people. And I think that's why the Lord sends us. He sends us because I think in our lives we spend a lot of time focusing on ourselves. And when you focus on yourself, it's hard to ever be truly happy. But when the Lord sends us on missions to go and think of others and to try to bring them unto Him, we begin to realize that the way to truly be happy is to think of other people. And if you want to be a successful missionary, that's all you have to do. The country of Honduras, that field is white. It is ready to harvest. And the people there, they are some of the most faithful people I've ever met in my lives. And they want what you have. And if you've been called to Honduras, you can be excited to know that the members of the church there, they want to help you. And they want to help grow the work and to move it forward. And if you want to be successful, the best way is just to forget yourself and go to work, and try as hard as you can, and love the people you're there that are there, and realize that they love you, and they want to help you succeed. And the people that you talk to that aren't members of the church, they want to hear what you have to say, because they just love each other. They love being with other people. And I know that if you have the right attitude, and if you're excited about the work and excited about being there, and focus on the positive aspects of being a missionary, that you'll be happy. The Lord will bless you with happiness as you focus on other people. And the best way to be happy is to spend as little time thinking about yourself as possible. And then the Lord will put lots of people in your path that will be excited to hear your message. And I know that as you do that, and as you bring souls unto the Savior, that your own shortcomings will be minimized, and your strength will be magnified, and you'll have more of the Spirit in your own life, and you'll have an experience that you'll never forget. I know the church is true, and I know what you're going to teach is true. The gospel is the good news. And I know that as you focus on the Savior and focus on His teachings and helping others, that you'll have the blessings that you need, and you'll be able to do what the Lord would have you do. I wish you luck. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
I was in the MTC, and I was kind of ready to get out of there, get to the mission field, teach some people. And so we get on the plane, we arrive at the Tegicigalpa airport, which is one of the most dangerous airports to land in. Right in front of the landing, the landing way, there's a huge hill. So before we landed, we saw on the map that we had to turn around and try it again. And he was able to land. We got on the runway, and we were kind of like seeing how Honduras is out the windows. Lots of poor houses, tons of palm trees. And then we get in the airports. Things are still kind of normal. There's lots of Americans in there, and so you still kind of feel like you're in the States. But as soon as the doors open from the airport, it's chaos. Lots of just dirt bikes, crazy traffic. There's lots of armored guards around, just guarding the banks, the grocery stores, everywhere. And so, to me, that was a shock, just coming from Utah and going to Tegucigalpa. It's said to be one of the most dangerous cities in the world, but as long as you're obedient, you'll be fine. So before the mission, I was like a very serious, punctual, get it done kind of guy. And Honduras is very laid back. So I would say that was a good challenge for me. Teach me to be more chill, just to take things as it comes, and whatever happens, happens. And Honduras, like I said, it's very chill. In the south, everyone has hammocks. They just take their naps on their hammocks. Life is good. People are usually always home. That's the nice thing. So you can usually always get there to teach them in the south, because they're always there. Meetings never start on time, so get used to that. Don't be surprised. By the end of your mission, you will just be on their schedule and know how the system works. So every Christmas, they cook this thing called torrejas, and it's kind of like French toast, but it's boiled in sugar cane, and so it's pretty good. Then a couple days later, on New Year's, they blow off a ton of fireworks, and there they have all kinds of fireworks. They have fireworks that are pretty much like bombs that are this big, and so things get really loud on New Year's. It's kind of hard to sleep. They do this thing called El Viejo. So at the end of every year, they blow up kind of like a statue of someone. And that's to represent that the year's over and it's time to start a new page. So what they do is they usually get a bunch of sacks, they fill it with hay or anything else they find, and then they fill it with fireworks. And right at New Year's, they blow it up, and that's how they celebrate New Year's. The mission is divided into 3 parts. I luckily got to be in all of them, so I kind of know how it is. In the city, that's the most dangerous part. Normally, they do send sister missionaries there, but normally it's a lot of elders. I was also in the south. The south is where most of the sisters are because it's more safe, and also the east. It's more like the outside country towns, stuff like that. But the city is where you need to be safe. So I'll give you a few tips. In the mission, they're going to give you a cell phone if you're a zone leader. Well, actually, now they give everyone a cell phone. So luckily, they don't give you a nice one. If you're walking around with an iPhone or an Android, you are going to get robbed. So you're lucky you're walking around with a little tiny cell phone, but still you might get robbed. I wasn't in the city a lot in my missions, so I never got mugged. Our house was broken into once, but that's pretty normal actually for the mission. But the main thing is, as long as you're obedient, you'll be fine. A lot of people would hide their money in their ties in the little back pocket. Like if you go up behind the tip and around, you can kind of feel a little slit there. You can put some money in there. Normally you should walk around with no more than 100 limps, which is like $5. Also in the mission, they give you a lot of tips about being in buses. Normally if you're in a bus, you want to be towards the front. You don't want to be in the back of the bus because there's no one watching. And also just be very street smart at night. Don't go to the places where the members tell you not to go. the members have lived there their whole lives, so they know where the dangerous parts are, and they'll kind of tell you, you shouldn't go there, you shouldn't go there. So they're pretty helpful. I guess I'll give you an experience. Why not? So one time it was late, we were walking back home, and all of a sudden we see a lady screaming, and she was running across the road, and some guys jumped out of the car and they started robbing her. And so immediately we knew that we had to turn around, that we should not go anywhere closer or be near that situation, because the people that rob, they're usually always armed. And even though we have the spirit, we don't have a gun. So we can't really put up a fight against them, and it's better just to turn around. A lot of times you may want to feel like being a hero, but you have to be smart about it too. And so luckily we turned around, walked away, and the guys drove off, and then we went and we helped her up, and everything was fine. So I would say just the biggest thing is just be obedient, and don't carry a lot of money. Don't talk a lot on the streets on your phone, because you don't want people to know you have a cell phone, even though it's not that nice. And yeah. Also, don't teach people that may be gang members, because you never know who will open the door up to you. So it could be anyone. I mean, if you're out contacting and you're just desperate to find someone to teach, I feel like anyone that just smiles and lets you in, you're going to do it. But also try to be smart about it. So there's tons of street food. They sell all kinds of fruits you've never seen before. So you'll have tons of great natural juices, really, really good. Tons of bananas. I think actually there's like 12 different kinds of bananas in Honduras, and they actually have a banana soda, so you'll have to try that. There's a typical food in Honduras. It's called the baleada. It means like someone that's shot. That's what the word means, but the food is actually really good. It's a flour tortilla with beans, fried plantains, this thing they call mantequilla, which is like a cream, eggs, sausage, and avocado. So that's really good. And they sell it on the street, and it's really cheap, so you can get that. In Tegicigalpa, there's 3 parts of the mission. There's the east, the city, and the south. The south is more of the rural, like poor area. So typically there, the food is different. Lots of soups, lots of chicken, and more soups, which is interesting because there it's the hottest part of Honduras, and you're eating soup, so you're just having fun. There's this dish in the south called curiles, and it's oysters. But the way they prepare it is they take the oysters out of the sea, and they just crack them open, and that's how they eat it. They put a little salt on it. They don't cook it, anything. And so it looks kind of funny. It's like the meat of the oyster with the blood and everything. And you could try that. There's this thing called sopa de mondongo. A lot of missionaries liked it, but then there was some that didn't. I was one of those that didn't really like it that much. What it is it's cow stomach, and so I mean, if you're someone that just looking at a food, you kind of don't want to eat it just by what it looks like, you probably won't eat it. I learned that I love papaya. The members there are so nice. Even though they have nothing, they'll give you whatever they have. So a lot of times we get licuados de papaya, which is papaya smoothies. Those are really, really good. And normally there, you don't cook your food. Usually you pay someone to cook for you, and typically you can find someone that cooks good food. Normally it's just rice, beans, and then maybe some chicken or beef, and it's pretty good. Starting off, Spanish was pretty hard for me to learn. Everyone I I imagine, feels like they talk really, really fast. And coming from the MTC, all my teachers were Americans, so I had that accent in my mind. I thought I was good, going to Honduras, already knew Spanish, and I get there, and I don't know anything. And my companion didn't really know English, so there's a lot of times communication problems. That was hard at first. But as time went on, Spanish got easier. You have a lot of fun times though with Spanish. I remember one time I was in the city in Tegucigalpa and there's tons of hills. And so we were walking up this really steep hill and I was trying to tell my comp to carry me. But there's a word in Spanish that's very similar to carry, but it means, it's a cuss word to poop on someone. And so we were going up the hill, and instead of telling him to carry me, I told him to poop on me in a very vulgar way. And so you'll have moments like that, just learning the language and making a fool of yourself. But all in all, it's fun. In Honduras, instead of talking in tú, they talk in vos, which is kind of different, but if you learn your grammar pretty well, it's easy to pick up on. And you don't even need to worry about it because you'll just be talking in usted the whole time. That's the more formal way to talk to people. In the south of Honduras, instead of finishing the words, a lot of times we'll just say, especially if there's an S at the end. So let's say, so if I'm saying you, or if I'm saying more, if you want more, I'd say, ¿Quieres más? And so, I mean, at first it's kind of funny, but then you get used to it and maybe you'll actually start doing it. But you'll have a lot of fun with the language. And Hondurans, they also, a lot of times with the S, if it's in between different other letters, they'll make it a J. Like, and if I want to say what happened, ¿Qué pasó? Like, ¿Qué pasó? It's not that distinct, but there's a lot of people you can find that say it like that. Before the mission, so I went to BYU, and everyone around me was getting their mission calls and going to different places, and I was kind of wrapped up in that. Where would I go? What language would I learn and everything? And I guess I wasn't really focused on the main purpose of going on a mission. And so at the time I was taking a prep course for the mission, mission prep at BYU. And my teacher, Professor Bott, he started talking about a quote that Elder Holland said in one of his talks. I guess he was talking to a group of missionaries, and at this time he just walked in, sat down, and then the meeting started. And as soon as he stood up to talk, the first thing he said was, "It's not about you, it's not about you, and it's not about you." And I think that really struck me hard, knowing that the mission isn't about what language you learn, what culture you experience, what adventure you have. It's all about your service to God. And so that hit me really hard. It made me realize that I need to worry less about myself, worry about what the Lord needs me to do for my mission. And so from that time I started doing service and trying to involve myself more in some activities to help prepare me for my mission. And that helped a lot. Okay, so you just opened your mission call. You're going to Tegus. So it's gonna be hard. I wish someone would have told me that before my mission. I was thinking the mission would just be an adventure. I would just fall in love with the people immediately, and everyone would accept us. We just give a ton of service. It'd just be a party. But it is hard. And the good thing is, though, you're going to be put in a lot of situations that you're not going to be comfortable in. And so that's going to help you grow and learn how to adapt and be a better person. So just some advice that an older missionary gave to me when I was just new in the mission. I was kind of just, I don't know, blaming things on other people, just like kind of feeling sorry for myself. And he told me that I need to stop trying to change the mission and just let the mission change me. So like, instead of trying to make the mission how you want it made, just do what you're supposed to do and follow the advice of your leaders, and you will turn out to be whatever God wants you to be. And that was something that luckily I got to see at the end of my mission, and something I wish I would have known at the very start, so I could have gotten started earlier.